Hello, my name is Maria Judy, and I will be doing my favorite brain part on the cerebellum. So, what we already know is that the brain is composed of three parts, and the one that I'm doing, the cerebellum, is one of them, along with the cerebrum and the brainstem. Even though this part of the brain is very physically small, it is vital to how humans interact and behave. So, a description of the cerebellum. When researching more about the cerebellum, there were many sources that provided me with a lot of information. Two of the major components of the cerebellum are the cerebellar cortex and the cerebellar nuclei. You can see on the top right picture that's the cerebellar cortex, and then the cerebellar nuclei is the second one. The cerebellum plays a key role in the storage of both positive and negative emotions that humans feel on a day to day basis. I thought this was really cool when I was researching that it helps us connect certain emotions to certain memories that we've experienced in the past. So, the location of the cerebellum, it is located deep within the brain. It's behind the top part of the brainstem where the spinal cord meets the brain. So, it is made up of two hemispheres, and it can be found in the area where the base of the head and the skull meets your neck, as you can see in this picture. So there are two different functions, I guess you would say, for the cerebellum. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is the voluntary. The cerebellum controls many voluntary movements a human must do. Some of these include our walking ability, our posture, our balance, our coordination, speech, and eye movements. And having a healthy cerebellum, this allows humans to walk and act and behave in a smooth motion and not be jagged or anything like that. So, the second part of function is the cognitive. And not only does the cerebellum play a role in voluntary movements, but it's also extremely important for cognitive functions of the brain. Some of its functions are language, processing of emotions, attention, pleasure or reward response, fear response, and having a divided attention. Um, so there is still more research that is being made now that involve cognitive functions, but there are still some happening today. So if the cerebellum were to be damaged, there are a bunch of conditions that could have occurred. Ataxia, tremors, and vertigo. And ataxia can be described as having abnormally uncoordinated movements or an inability to control fine motor tasks and change in speech. Um, Tremors can be described as having involuntary contractions in the muscles in a rhythmic pattern. Vertigo can be described as having sudden feelings of the person spinning or their environment around them spinning. And so there are many ways that a cerebellum might be damaged, and some of those are having a head injury, a stroke, a brain tumor, or neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's disease or Huntington's disease. So there are connections that the cerebellum has to other types of disorders. Um, and there has been and still is research on the cerebellum and its connection to other types of disorders that humans experience. Some of those include autism spectrum disorder, which can also be said as ASD. And ASD is a developmental condition characterized by impairments in communication and social interactions. It can also be repetitive or restrictive behaviors. Another one is dyslexia, and dyslexia is a learning ability that causes a person trouble with processing how speech sounds relate to words or parts of words. This causes people with the difficulty of spelling, reading, and writing. Another one is anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders is a collection of disorders that involve the feeling of having an excessive amount of fear and anxiety. And lastly, um, the last connection is schizophrenia. So, schizophrenia is a serious mental illness that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave. It can cause a person to have symptoms like hallucinations, delusions, lack of emotion, and disorganized speech and movement.